What's up, everybody? I'm Tommy McCollister. Welcome to the High Level Husband Podcast. And today I'm joined by my brother, Ryan Olito. This guy's been in my life now for almost 2 years, Ryan, which is crazy to really think about it, how fast and how long that also sees. But my brother, Ryan, he's out in Florida. He's in the health insurance industry and recently also opened up his own insurance brokerage, which we're super pumped about because we know God's been doing giant things in his life. And so, Ryan, thanks, brother, for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you, man. Happy to be here.
Yeah, no, it's great to be here, dude. So just give you guys a heads up, about 2 weeks ago, me and Ryan climbed or hiked, whatever you want to say it, survived, probably a little bit of everything, the Grand Canyon. We were out in, I lead a men's mastermind group for some of you guys who don't know. And Ryan is just such a close friend in my life that he came out to join us on that. And we did like an 18-mile hike through the Grand Canyon, which was transformative for me in so many ways, dude. Like, I mean, I wasn't even planning on answering this question, but dude, I'd be really curious to just now that it's been a couple of weeks, what has been a couple of takeaways from you since then, either personally or spiritually or in any area, dude?
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind is burn the boats. Right when you're in that canyon and you are dead exhausted and you want to throw up, you want to pass out, you see the fear of God in other people's faces on the trail. Um, Honestly, it was kind of chaotic. All of that's going on. You just want to be done with it, and you look up and you still realize you still have another 5 hours of going up a stairmaster. You go to places that you can't manufacture yourself, right? We could do all the cold plunges in the world, all the sauna sessions, but that puts you in a place where it's sink or swim, and there's unless you're going to sit there and die. I mean, you're going to figure it out. So for me, I went to a place that I haven't been to in a long time. So enjoy it. It's bittersweet, right? You don't enjoy it in the moment, but for growth and character, it's great.
Yeah, it's one of those things, is when I was on that hike and I was thinking it, is I think for about the first 16 and a half miles, I was good. And then I got to that mile and a half, that last mile and a half, and I wasn't good. And it was like that moment, when we used to drink, right? Where you would get super drunk and you'd be throwing up in the toilet and you'd be like, never again am I drinking. This is it. I'm done, and then the next night you'd be drunk again. And, but that was how it was for me on the hike. I was just like, dude, never again. And then within every hour that went on, I was like, oh, that was great. I'll do that again. Yeah, I'm ready to let's go again. So I don't know.
Yeah,
For
agreed.
me, it was kind of like that. It's kind of like this bittersweet, like what you're saying. But obviously, one of the reasons why I wanted you to come on the hike, one, dude, I just love spending time with you. Like the drive out there was so cool. How we just got to basically go deep for 4 straight hours on a conversation, which we should have had microphones set up. That would have been the real podcast. But man, one of the things I love about you is I mean, you already know I'm on you on this, is you're just a phenomenal listener and somebody who you listen so good that you ask amazing questions back. You're so deep. And that's what I wanted the other men to experience, of what it's like to have real friends in our life. Because it's crazy, dude. Back in the day, me and you both come from a rough background of doing dumb things and maybe not having the best home life and all of that. And I don't know. I mean, obviously, I'm going to imagine the same thing for you, as we attracted those same type of friends in our lives. But now that me and you've been on such a big growth journey in our lives, it's crazy how we attract those new type of people in our lives. And it's not like I'm putting out calling people for this. They just happen to randomly come into our lives. But before, I randomly had, with part of my French, but kind of crappy friends come into my life, and I wasn't looking for them. It's just what we did, And so it's just been a cool journey about that. I mean, would you say you've noticed similar things? Because a lot of people who listen to this podcast, I would say, from what I talk to a lot of men, whether they're successful or not in business or just in their other things, they don't have solid friendships in their life. And so I know I'm thankful for you on that, brother.
Yeah, no, you too. And yeah, I think about this all the time. So perfect topic to bring up is same. I had some crappy friends, and the reason was I was a crappy friend or a crappy person, right? And I would say about 5, 6 years ago, I started purging out my friends, and this is where the conversation with people gets weird, right? How could I cut out people that have been in my life for 20 years? How could I cut out a family member? And I get it, and it's not easy, but that's the choice you have to make. Do you want easy and a crappy circle of friends, or do you want hard, but then you get the fruits of the labor, which is putting yourself around people that are going to build you up, make you a better person. Now it's not as black and white as that, right? It's not like you get rid of the old friends and then, oh, there's Tommy and John and everyone else shows up. No, there's Alex Hormozy has a great interview where he alludes to there's this loneliness period in between when you
Mm-hmm.
shed the person that you were, and then you have to become the new version of yourself, whether that's through reading or podcasts or just any type of self-help. That doesn't automatically get absorbed into you. So there's a loneliness period, which I went through, and I'm sure you did too, where the new friends aren't showing up yet because you're not that new great person that is going to attract those people.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be patient. And yeah, it's not fun, but eventually, if you're persistent and you continue to learn and um, stay away from the old crowd, and you just wait and put yourself in positions like a man academy or a circle where people are thriving, those people will be attracted to you. But it's not an overnight thing,
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of people don't commit to it, and I get it. It's not easy, but that's what kind of life do you want? That's
Mm.
the question. If you want if you want the life bad enough that you don't have, you'll do things that most people don't, which is that.
Mm. Dude, that was such a phenomenal answer because you're right. It's that lag between where like those old identity of who you were and then the friends that came with that. And then the identity, how we want to see ourselves as that new person and that we are becoming, but it's so fresh that it still kind of feels imposter syndrome-ish a little bit, or it's just, is this really who I am? And having those people, there is that lag between those times. And I think that goes with any part of our life, whether that's friendships, right? Whether that's being on a physical fitness diet, we might start losing weight, when maybe if you're obese or something, and then you get to that spot and you're like, well, this isn't really working. I don't feel much better. So you're in that still lag zone of not understanding, well, no, if you just keep going, you'll get there. I feel like that's with faith too. I feel like faith comes out hot. Like if you give your life to Jesus and then it's like, you're on this high, but that high is going to go away because that's just technically just signing up for the marathon, right? And then you got to go. So that lag zone is so true. I mean, just even looking at the multiple seasons of my life, dude, especially 20 years ago, dude, I was like on an island, especially the city I lived in. There was nobody doing the things that I was like wanting to become. So that's why I probably got lost after 10 years. And then when I moved to Vegas, that helped, but I still had a couple year lag period too of becoming that. How long was that for you, bro? When you were going through that, like, guess that middle ground spot?
3 to 4 years.
Wow.
I think there's reasons for that. I think where I come from, which is the Northeast, New Jersey, New York, that's one thing I probably should have added. It really helps when you get yourself out of the old environment, not just
Mm-hmm.
shed the people you're around, but shed the environment. Because
Mm.
I don't think we realize like we've become our environment. So I think the combination of both is the most powerful. And I know you did that too. You went from California to Vegas. I went from New Jersey to Florida. Once I made that move from Jersey to Florida, all the fruits of the labor that I had put in for the prior 3 to 4 years have just exploded. The people that I've met down here, the community that I'm a part of is incredible. And I still pinch myself every day. I'm like, wow, like the people that I'm attracting, like yourself, I'm like, these people really want to be in my life. Like these are the people I would have begged to be in their lives, and they're the ones seeking me out. And I'm like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
it's really cool to see. But yeah, 3 to 4 years, and the tipping point didn't really happen until I made the move to Florida.
Mm. Dude, I love that you said it. Sometimes it has to be the move, right? And sometimes I mean, not everybody can move, right? Maybe you've been gone through a divorce. Maybe you have kids with somebody else and you just can't up and move. And I would never recommend you anybody leaving their kids, right? Like obviously you don't have kids and so you didn't leave a situation like that. But if we can, right? Like we can't become, like if we have an alcohol problem, right? We can't not hang out with those friends anymore, but still go to the bar and hang out. But hey, I'm just drinking water. No, eventually you're going to get back on that drink. Is something's going to happen because we have real feelings and emotions, and eventually you'll get triggered. Somebody will influence you. Something will happen. But if you go bigger, right, to the city, it's the same things that we see that remind us of our old self, or we run into people and all of that. And next thing you know, we can't get away from it. But it was so refreshing. I know when I got to Vegas, and it's lame as it is, but like Costco, I know Sam's Club might be like a bigger thing on the East Coast, but same type of store. In my old city, dude, sometimes I dreaded going there because it was like, all right, I'm gonna go get shopping, but I'm also gonna run into about 10 people. Two of them maybe I'm cool with seeing, eight that I'm or four that I'm like, definitely don't want to see, when I'm have to like dip down another aisle, and then a couple where it's like I just prefer not to say what's up. Then when I got to Vegas, it was super frustrating because I saw nobody I knew there. It was, and then as I rebuilt myself, it gave me that chance for me to really put in the work to grow to that new self. And so you're so right, just removing ourselves from those situations. If you can't move to a new city or something like that, remove yourself from the places where you hang, whether that is nightclubs, bars, and it doesn't even have to necessarily things like that, just the certain situations that you're doing the same things. Because if you're doing the same things, you're kind of seeing you're the same person that you are. It's hard to like not do that. And I often get husbands and they're like, man, my wife's not changing. She's not trusting me anymore or anything like this. And I'm like, because you're doing the same stuff, your attitude is changing, but you're still hanging with the same friends. You're still having the 2 to 3 beers a night. You're still doing the fantasy football on the weekend. You're still doing these other things. She's just seeing that you're not maybe being defensive. That's cool, but she needs to see radical shifts in those things. And I think we do too, to realize that we are actually changing in some of those things. Man, I think removing things from our life is like probably my favorite lesson from what I coach in my coaching program. So I'm so stoked that you brought that up. Are you going through any of that right now, bro? Like, are you doing anything in your life? Because I think that this process of shedding is a never ending one, right? Like, I think the conveyor belt comes again. So sometimes it's the friends or it's drugs or porn or things, right? And then it gets like different things that we have to remove. Is there anything that you feel like God's calling on your heart right now that you're like, dude, I need to like remove this from my life right now?
Hmm. Um, no, it's what do I need to add more to, and that's God. Um,
Mm,
Showing up to church and reading the Bible every day is good. Going to Bible study is good, but he was telling me to do more. Put my
mm,
and I joined. I don't know if I told you I joined a youth group on Wednesday nights, helping kids at the
mm-hmm.
church, and I absolutely love it. And a kid yesterday actually asked me, like, how do you, it was the youth group yesterday, how do you get more of a relationship with Jesus? And I'm probably not the best guy to be asking that, but was my answer is you just have to throw yourself into it as much as possible. Like the more you're around it, the more you'll absorb it, the more you'll have that relationship. And for me, ever since I started, the youth group about a month and a half ago, like my conversations with God have been more frequent, more deep.
Mm.
I'm leaning on him more than I was in the past. So it doesn't necessarily answer your question about what to remove. And you're right. I already see, I guess, some things that maybe down the line I'll have to remove, but I'm in the embracing moment of this new environment
Like an increasing
of
moment right now, rather. I always say it's release and increase, right? So it sounds like you're in an increasing moment.
correct. Yeah. I'm in the season of taking it all in, building my tribe and trying to flourish and help others flourish as much as possible, submerge myself in faith as much as possible. And to your point, it will come a point where I'm going to have to do an evaluation and say, okay, what now needs to be shed, what needs to be left behind, etc. And yeah, luckily, I'm not there yet, but I know it's coming.
Yeah. It's a never ending process, right? And I think that's in life. Like we could do, I don't do this, but like so for families, they do like a spring cleaning. They go through their house, they clean out their closets, they get rid of old clothes, they do all this other stuff. Come next spring, it needs to be done again because we accumulate. But if we're doing this thing that, like I'm saying, releasing, increasing, I would say we need to release things, and then that will allow us to be lighter load to increase. But then once we get to those new levels, right, we'll be at a new spot, and it's like, okay, well, what's going to take me from those that aren't serving me now to go to the next level? And then it'll be again and again this process of release, increase, to get to those other areas. I think I sent you that book, and if I didn't, I've told you, I've mentioned it multiple times. I'm pretty sure I did. Practicing the Way. I don't know if you ended up getting it or
I bought
something.
it. Yeah. Yep.
Dude, so good. This book's really rocking my world in a lot of ways. But anyways, I was just reading a chapter today, and it was saying, like how to get deeper with the teaching. And this is super basic, so this isn't what the book's about because it is really a far deeper. But he was saying it's like being in church, reading the word, more praying, being in like a men's group or some type of group, right? And then listening to podcasts, listening to sermons, reading different books, being around other growth-minded people, doing all of that. That's the first step. But the chapter previous was so good to this. He says, wisdom and all of that is absolutely pointless. Even knowing the Bible from inside and out is absolutely pointless if you don't actually put it to action, right? Like, because we could know it all, but what are we doing with it all? And I think that's where, I use that. It was me for many, that 8-year wilderness period I was in, was like, I was reading a lot of books. I just wasn't putting them to action, which honestly made it hurt me even more because then I knew I had more tools and I just wasn't using them. I guess it'd be like if I knew I was like, I don't know, Usain Bolt or something. I could run super fast, but I didn't join a track team. I would feel really bad about myself. And that was where it's at. So we have to take those tools and then put them into action and live that way of being Christ, right? So doing all those things for Christ, but then actually putting them into play, like loving on people, pushing in on your purpose and in all of those things. And one last thing on this, like, man, I was getting like these deep thoughts yesterday, and I actually wrote this down as like kind of one of those questions, but because I feel like, well, I know you're very similar on this. We're both people who love to learn. Like, and I mean, and I think when I first met you, I was definitely a learner. You were on a higher level of that. Like, you were burning through books, and I imagine still today are in your learning, which is why you're so easy to talk to, because you're a wealth of knowledge. But what I've been desiring more lately, I don't know how this was for you, but for me, I would desire at the end of the day, I would go, okay, what did I achieve today? And that was how I felt good about laying my head on night. Did I make this amount of money? Did I get my workout in? Did all that stuff? And don't get me wrong, I'm still doing all that stuff. But now my thing that I'm measuring at the end of the day is how much did I learn today? Because now I'm at the guy where I had to do the achieving. I had to get the actions there. Now I am that disciplined guy. So now it's switched to, hey, I need to learn even more because I already know now I'm going to put it to action. I've proven it. Right. And so now for me, I wrote a little post on it, said lately, for me, it's not about how much I can work, but how much I can learn. Working more may get me more money, but learning more will not only get me more money, but will get me more of what I truly want, which is greater impact. And so I feel like you're in a similar spot, where you just desire to learn even more and soak that up. And where does that come from, brother? Because both of me and you have a checkered past: women, drugs, crime, everything. We
Me?
got
No, no, not me.
well, yeah, you were. I'm saying your twin brother. Um, Orion, not Ryan. But we have that. We got all that stuff, the things of the world, and guess what? It didn't make us any happier. And now I know that's not what you crave. It's the craving of the learning. So I guess what is are am I correct about that? About where you with you on that? And then also what made you start craving that more over the things of the world?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I'll start with a quote that Jim Rome says. I literally, once I read this years ago, I started to live my life by this. It says, um, work harder on yourself than you do at your job. Work hard
Mm,
on yourself, you can make a living. I'm sorry. Work hard on your job, you can make a living. Work hard on yourself, you can make a fortune. And
mm,
essentially what he was saying is, yeah, if you're a salesman, yeah, you could study to become a better salesman, but it'll just probably make you just a better salesman. But if you study, if you read self-help books, if you read how to manage your emotions or get into the word or fill in the blank, that'll make you a better father, that'll make you a better husband, that'll make you a better salesman. It's like five birds one stone, right? So um that's where, when I heard that quote, that's when I really was intentional. But the why behind it, why do I crave that so much? So I grew up in a very rich neighborhood in New Jersey, and we were the poor people in town, which
mm,
is I would have rather lived in the ghetto and been on a level playing field instead of all my neighbors had mansions and, well, not my neighbors because I didn't live in that part of the town, but all my friends were going on vacations and they had cars and they had nothing to worry about and everything was given to them. And I was this poor little, at the time, in hindsight, it was the best thing for me. But the word no was used a lot in my household. And I really, the growth, the desire to grow comes from, I don't want to be told no, that I can't have something, and not in a malicious way, in a, if I want to send my kids to the best private schools, I want to be able to, or if I
Mm,
want to homeschool them, I want to be able to afford to have somebody home with them. If my wife doesn't want to work, I want to make sure that she has the ability to fill in the blank. Like, I don't want to I cannot imagine, and I empathize with families, like you said, that are in situations where they know that maybe they have a job that's tied to a certain location and they know they have to get out of there, but they can't because they have 5 kids and bills and you name it. It's like, I don't ever want to be in that position where I can't help the people that I'm around. So
mm.
the only way for me to get there is to continuously grow and evolve. And that's been in me since I was little, but it really kicked into high gear when I saw that quote by Jim Rohn. That's when I was intentional. I said, this is the route I'm going to take, and it's worked out for me pretty well.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
dude, it's so cool that like that's the thing though, is you saw it and you did something about it. Because how many times do we read something and we're like, oh, that's great, and the next thing you know, it's like, oh, there's something else, and then we go off down that road, right? Like, no, you see, you took action, and I'm sure it wasn't like this that night, but it was something that stuck there, right? I feel like, and maybe this is everybody, but I know sometimes it's about myself. Like I was telling a story on a podcast earlier this week, and it was some random thing that I saw Method Man mention about Notorious B.I.G. on a VH1 documentary years ago. And just one line stuck out to me. And here I am still telling that line. So it's like what we do with the information that we consume is ultimately the most important thing, because we can consume it all, but if we don't do anything with it, it's pointless. That's why the Bible says faith without works is dead. Right? Like we have to go do these things. And if we do, these good things will happen on it. And I got to get that Jim Rome. I'll have it text you. I'll have you text me after that quote, because it's really similar on like what I coach on or speak on, like especially the speech you came and saw me at, right? Like I always say, to scale your business, you need to scale your marriage, but to scale your marriage, you need to scale yourself. Right now, let's say if you're not married, it's this married the same thing. It would be to scale your business. You need to scale yourself, because oftentimes we can go get all these coaching programs or whatever, or hire consultants to grow our business. Are we able to have the business that will do it? Will we run it the way it's supposed to be run, or will it crumble? Right. I know that's the same reason why people win lottery, right? Win the lottery and they just go, I think it's like 87 or 93% of the people, right? They go broke because they're not capable of having that type of wealth and having it. And so it's just so true. It starts with us, not only that work that we put in, but the self-love, right? Like we have to be able to love ourselves. We were talking about a friend before this podcast, and it's like, man, if that guy got a little more self-love, big things in his life would happen. And it was funny when you were just talking there, bro. Old friends. I checked in with an old friend this week, and he's been growing, which has been cool, but he's still kind of tied to my old city. But there's a friend who's like his best friend, who was like my best friend from like 20 years ago. And when I asked him about him on the call, it's like, hey man, how's so-and-so doing? Like I haven't talked to him in a couple of years. He'll comment on some social media stuff from time to time. And he goes, oh man, he just walked out on his job the other day. Now, mind you, this dude's 42 and a little girl and a single parent. And it reminded me of a story when he used to live at my apartment and sleep on my couch, not paying rent 20 years ago. And he came home one day and he goes, man, I walked out on my job today because he got the boss said something that hit his emotions and his ego. And he says, I'm out of here. And it was, so when you were just talking about this, I wasn't even planning on talking about this, but it was like, dude, here he is 20 years later doing the exact same thing. Victim mentality, the world's against them. Some people have silver spoons in their mouth and all these other things. Or he could just choose to still go, right? Instead of doing these things. And so it's sad like that. And the same about me, right? If you see the trajectory of my life, right? Like it's gone up, his kind of stayed the same 20 years later. And so it's so important to do it when we get those quotes from Jim Rome or whatever, to actually just do something about it, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. There's unfortunately there's more people like your friend than there are not.
Yeah.
And that's not for me to brag about us. They're just, I think most people, especially men, they're comfortable with the world that they know, right? So they continue to operate from the same mindset like your friend, which is sabotaging him, but it's comfortable because he knows the outcome.
Mm.
He's safe there. Me and you were sick of that mentality, right? So we did something about it. We were sick and tired of being sick and tired. That old quote, but it's true.
Hmm.
That pain threshold for us exceeded it, and we were like, okay, yeah, we might be comfortable in that mindset. I'm not comfortable with the results. Your buddy is, and I got tons of friends like they're comfortable with the results, right? They're good, so they're going to continue doing it. And I think, unfortunately, I think most men are like that. They're in their box and they're going to operate the way that they are accustomed to, and the results will be what they are, and they'll live with them. And it's sad because you don't grow to your fullest capacity living that way.
Yeah. It's crazy because it's like, I think what keeps them to there, right? You're so true. It's like, I've seen this in so many marriages. I've seen this in my parents' marriage when my mom was physically abused, not like a ton, but definitely some. And I'm not saying any is good, but are but ton of verbal abuse. And still to this day that she stays, because it's like you're saying, it's easier to know where she's at, because she's basically went from being under her parents' roof to being under my dad's roof. And so she's never been on her own. Now she's 70 something years old. It's really scary to be on her own. She wouldn't know what to do. So that's why she stays, right? And I know some other people it is as well. But I think it's also like, there's a lot of times people see the stacks up of failure in their life or rejection, and they do. I know I hate rejection, right? Like it hurts. I think I've just gotten to the point now where like there's no other option. I just got to keep going. And then now I've seen the receipts of what happens if you do keep going, that eventually it won't be rejection, that it will be, something great. But I just know that just not that, and this isn't about my buddy, but this is just a lot of men. And I'm just going to use his situation. My friend was like, he said, yeah, he's thinking about starting up his own landscaping business. And I said, man, I would love to see him do that, but I'm also really scared for him, because knowing him, he's going to quit and it's not going to work. And he's going to then add another receipt to his thing saying, no, I am just a failure. No, nothing works out for me. No, everybody else just has it specific ways. I'm just not lucky. Right. Well, then no, it's just that he doesn't follow through. So we get this hope. For me, for many years, bro, I would get hope. And then I just knew the shoe was going to drop. And when it did, it was a straight punch to the face like Mike Tyson, which eventually got me stuck for 8 years, because I was tired of feeling that letdown and thing. But on the other side, it's just so worth it to go. But like you said on the call or on the podcast, 3 to 4 years of a friend zone, but that's a 3 to 4 years of a lot of zone of anything before we do it. And that's biblical. If we go and look at all the biblical things, dude is not momentarily like killing it. Most of those stories for years in the making. So God reminding us on that, just to kind of pivot here on that, dude, is like, just to touch on the faith thing. I'd love to touch on like your journey of that, because I get a lot of people who come to my program or in podcast, and they're believers but very lukewarm, or they're they believe there's probably a higher power. Maybe they got baptized when they were a kid, but they've just then it's not really for me, or they had a bad experience, right? And I get it, it's a lot of people. But for you, besides the growth from the books and moving and things like that, um, I'd be wrong. I know I'm probably right to say the biggest thing for you is then when you finally like put your eyes on Christ and started growing in that area. I'd love for you to dive a little bit more into that and maybe encourage some people of like what that process was like and what maybe the fruit of that has been for you.
Yeah, well, I think most of the people that I speak to, whether it's in your group or other groups that are in that lukewarm spot, I can't help but think, even back home, when I talk to people about faith, back home being New Jersey, if you, I think I'm blessed in the sense that I didn't grow up. This is going to sound very controversial. I didn't grow up in a faith-based household, and I should say, like, I should preface it with my parents would have botched that, so I'm really glad they didn't, because I probably wouldn't follow that path. But that's, I think, what happens a lot of times is they grow in this up in this quote unquote faith-based household, and there's divorces, there's affairs and all these different things. And I'm sure, or they go to, you're Roman Catholic, they go to mass and it's like this guy with a hat on with the smoke and like this stuff. I can't relate to this stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people have the wrong idea about what following Christ is. And I'm glad that I never was put in a spot where I had to even decide. My parents literally said, we celebrated Christmas. My dad was quarter Jewish. We celebrated all the holidays. That was it. Like there was nothing. It was the most surface level household you could possibly create. But my parents said, we're going to let you pick your religion. We're not going to force anything on you. Right. And if I had a Keith Craft as a dad, I'd be pretty pissed that they said that, but I know I didn't, right? So I'm glad that they didn't take the reins and ruin my experience. They let me pick. So for the first 28 years of my life, I lived in a completely secular world. So I got the front row seat of what the world looks like, not only in my life, but everyone around, friends, family. I got to see the results: divorce, bankruptcy, homelessness, drug use, alcoholism. That's not to say that doesn't happen in a household, that maybe they go to church regularly, but it's all about odds, right? I think if you go to church and you are in the Bible every day and you have a relationship with God and your circle is faith-based and fill in the blanks, the odds of you running into one of the issues that I just named are so low
Mm-hmm.
that I'll roll my dice with Christ. I just made that up, but I'm serious. I'll roll my
So good
dice
though.
going that route versus, the people that I grew up with, my family, friends. It was just like right now, people just get married. Yep, I'm 32. It's that time. Everyone else is around it. Yeah, I want a kid, maybe two. And it's just like, where's your blueprint? Like, what's the
Mm-hmm.
foundation? There is none. We're just going to roll with it and see what happens. And you can't tell me that the divorce rate in this country isn't because there is no foundation of whatever religion. It's just, we're just going to wing it. Go open up a business and wing it. Don't have a goal, don't have a vision, just wing it. Let me know how that business turns out. It's the same way with the marriage, man. So I got a front row seat. I got to see the opposite side of it, which maybe some people in your life, they really haven't, right? Maybe they have some friends that are faith-based, some that are not. And it's like, they never got the transparent or stark difference of what life looks like completely without any type of religion. I've had it. And then when I went to Man Academy and saw you guys thriving in the areas that I've always innately believed that I wanted, business, fitness, men that were proud and love their wives and are intentional with their kids. I'm like, yeah, that's the route I'm going. If I fail, if I end up divorced and bankrupt and a drug addict, I'll take the risk. But I think
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be okay.
It's
Yeah.
worth the risk, man. That's
Yeah.
so good, bro, dude. And I love what you said there, man. I'm gonna break that off into a reel when I get this there. When you were just going in on like, but if you're in the Word, if you're surrounding yourself by people, if you're going to church, if you're doing all of these things, you're increasing your odds of a success. And the reason why Christianity gets a bad name is not because of atheists, it's because of Christians, because Christians don't do what Christianity actually is supposed to be doing. They aren't in the Word. They're not doing these things. They still, get drunk too many times. They're still watching porn. They're doing all these other things. And it's like, well, dude, like you're not really setting yourself up for success. If you do all of this, you're increasing your chances of success. Honestly, if you did everything the Bible says and you did it to a T, your life would be 100%. It won't be because you still could get cancer, tornadoes to still blow through your town, things like that. But the self-inflicted stuff would all be gone, 100% be gone. It would just be those outside things that are there. But when those outside things come, you'll be able to handle them far greater because it's going to bounce off because you're just so yoked with God doing His ways. It's when we leave out a few of those pieces, we're like a Jenga thing. We look strong and tall, But when maybe one little thing comes and hits it, then we fall, right? But we got to have the more blocks in there doing those things and filling it in. Each filling those holes might be Bible study, might be reading the words. Now we're filling the hole. We're getting a lot more sturdy. So when it hits us, we're good. And I had this thought the other day, dude, and I'm probably going to get murdered from this. And I almost did a reel on it, but I said, I couldn't figure it out. Maybe you'll tell me I need to get some bigger balls, bro. But so abortion's obviously a hot topic in this country. A very hot topic. I get it. Nobody will ever convince me, in any of the situations that it should happen, but I do understand when the people have been raped or something like that happens, that it does murky the water a little bit. But even in that spot, I do not agree with it. And because one, we're chosen by God for every single person. Now, did God choose for you to be raped so that this child could come to conceive? No, but as soon as that child was conceived, he already then implemented that child into a cog in the wheel. That's an important part of the wheel. And so that's a smaller part of it. But B, the one reason I'm saying this is because of what you just said about doing all these things. The thought I had was, how we get rid of 99.999% of abortions, because the rape ones are less than 1%, is if we just waited to get married to have sex, you would get rid of 99% of the abortions. Sure, you might get some secular people that are married that just don't want kids that will get it, but that's going to be like less than 1%. The reason why people get abortions is because they're having premarital sex with somebody that they're not sure they want to marry. Maybe they got drunk at the bar. Maybe they're teenagers and they just were having sex because that's what teenagers sometimes do, right? Now they're pregnant, and that's not what they had they did it outside of God's order for our life. If we did the God's order the way it's supposed to be done, we'll eradicate 99.99999% of abortions. And it wouldn't even need to be a thing, because there would just be no abortion clinics, because there would be no basically of it. And so if we just do things God's way, good things happen. So I wasn't trying to make this about abortion, but it is just about the template. If you do these things, good things really start happening in our life,
Yeah. And I'll touch on it real quick. Where my mind goes with this is, I'm not going to comment on the whole, women's body, their thing. Where I'm going to go is, I look at the incentivization, I think that's the word, of when you have something like an abortion in place, right? If there was no abortion in place, I can't help but think more people would just at the very least wear condoms and not
Right.
put them in, right? Because when you know that the ramifications of having sex with somebody are one pill away or one procedure away, yeah, we're human beings. We're going to take advantage of that system, right? And so I just think it incentivizes bad behavior, especially when you're talking about, underage kids that don't even have to tell their parents about it. And, there's laws in place that the healthcare companies don't even have to notify, or the doctors can't notify. Like, yeah, if I'm a 16-year-old kid and I don't have good guidance in my life, and I know that like there's a $20 pill, that the worst case scenario of having a kid, I'm going to take advantage of that at 16 years old. Right. And so we are just incentivizing people to make bad decisions with no ramifications.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's what that's a little layer up above yours, but that's where my mind goes.
That's so good. That's so good though, dude. There's we've given them that way out. But what's crazy is that's what they think. I don't know the stats off the top of my head. I'm not trying to turn this into an abortion podcast about anything, but just like the stats and are terrible for people who've had abortion, and how they get depression and things like that, self-worth, and how it haunts them for the rest of their lives. Every time they see a baby, they can kind of think of that, and so it just haunts them in so many different ways on that. But I can't remember what you just said a minute ago, but one of the things that, and what you just said, touched on one of the questions that I had, is when we were on this hike in the Grand Canyon, and especially when we were sitting and driving out there and we were talking, you kept pointing out, every time we would talk about somebody, you would say strong male figure in their life, strong male figure in their life. And it is so true. I'm not saying that we can't succeed without it. The odds increase when we have a strong male figure in our child's life, and have that for them. Sure, they're going to have to touch the stove. Sure, they're unique in their own ways, but we're going to increase the odds for them. And I know, like, after the watching the weekend, right? Because just so you guys don't know, some of us brought our sons with us out on this hike. And I think that was, for me, was like one of my favorite moments of my life, just being out there with my son. What was either a takeaway from seeing some of us with our kids, or even touching on the topic of what you keep saying is like the strong male figure in life? Because I think sometimes that gets overlooked. And I think what part, and I'm going to go on this, overlooked about that is sometimes people think being a great dad is helping our kids be a great athlete or helping our kids be these other things. And that's a part of it. But what if we were showing our kids by example what we were doing is more important than teaching little Johnny to hit a home run, right? In so many aspects. And so I just love for you to riff on whatever that brings up for you, because it was what you were bringing to my mindset.
Yeah, I mean, this goes in so many different directions because I didn't grow up with a strong male figure in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like growing up in a household without faith, I also know what it's like to grow up in a household without a male masculine presence. Compounded, I grew up in a household with a strong female masculine presence, which is even worse. But I look at masculinity from a father's perspective with a kid is like it's like bumpers when you go bowling, right? Yes, you're going to touch the stove and you may, go joyriding in a car without a license. And a strong masculine presence is going to knock you, not literally, knock you back into line and say, hey, that's not the right way to do things, right? You should have done this. You could have done that. Being intentional with their children. Me growing up, I had no bumpers, right? And for me, I had to burn my hand a million times before I had to be my own father and go, yeah, this isn't working out for you. Look at your life. This ain't, but I just went through 15 times of burning my hand. So
Mm-hmm.
so over the weekend when we went to the Grand Canyon, I looked around, we were around the campfire, and there's a really nice moment of everyone just kind of praising their children. And it was just, I got emotional over it, but just the intentionality behind letting them know. And you guys probably don't realize this, the kids don't realize it, but just telling them, hey, I'm proud of you and I love you. Those words, if you say nothing else, are going to change that. The trajectory of that kid's life is so much different if that kid never versus if that kid never had heard those praises from their father, right? And there's a great book. I'm sure I've told you about it. If not, it's called Wild at Heart. Anybody
Yeah,
that
I've read
has
it.
a young man in their a young son in their life who's a dad, it's a must read. It
Mm-hmm.
just shows the importance of what essentially, I'll boil it down to this. It's up to the mom to nurture the kid up to a certain age, especially when it comes to a man, specifically a son. After a certain age, it's up to the father to take them on the adventures, whatever that looks like. It could be sporting events, it could be hiking, it could be whatever, but like they're going on their own little journeys. And it is so important for them to do that. Otherwise, men are lost. If they don't have their dads to go explore with or to have these conversations that you're not comfortable having with your sister or your mom, like you internalize that and you suppress it and it's not natural. Biologically, it's not natural. You need a father to go to turn to trust with anything. You may not always like the answer, probably most times you won't, but at least it's just, he's got your back. And coming from a household where I didn't have any of that, I mean, gosh, I'm so glad that I finally woke up. But there was a lot of trials and tribulations that I had to go to that I know for a fact would have been avoided into the full capacity that I did run into issues had I just had a masculine man in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Someone to look up to, man. I mean, it's I think it's the most important topic in America, in the world today, is
Yeah.
the lack of men in the household stepping up. Yeah, we can blame women becoming more masculine, and me and you touched on it. What's the term that's being thrown around? Narcissist, and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
maybe they are those things. Feminism, yeah, that's not good. How did that happen? How did all that leak into society? Weak men. Men
Mm-hmm.
not stepping up, men going, yeah, okay. you know what, I'll let my wife do XYZ and I'm just going to be complacent. How's that working out for you? Right? So
Yeah.
it starts there, man. And it's the, to me, it's the most important topic. And to your point earlier, and then I'll wrap this up, is when I do the youth group on Wednesday nights, I know when I'm talking to these kids, and I always make it a point to ask, I know how their relationship is with their father before they tell me. Every
Mm.
time I'm 100% on every time. I know when there's either a female predominantly raising the son or there's no parent raising the son. I know,
Mm.
versus a kid that is respectful and confident, and I shouldn't say respectful, they're all respectful, but there's a different swagger, there's a different confidence, there's a different look in their eyes, a tone in their voice when there's a male in their lives.
Mm.
So it's important to say the
Yeah,
least.
man. You know what's excuse me, but what I love about your answer there was passion and is so much truth. We can take it back to biblical things, like where God says, like, hey, this is how a male's supposed to lead. He's supposed to be the head of the household, not a dictator who tells his wife what to do and things. That's not what leadership means. It's just that for those roles, he has his roles. The wife has hers. And I think the stat is like, if the male in the house is leading in a spiritual leadership, the children are like 70 something percent likely to know the Lord, versus if the male isn't the spiritual leader of the house and it's the wife, it's like 20%. It's so much lower, which is crazy stats on that. I mean, you could go down this rabbit hole for everything and look at all the stats for prison population, for crime, for drug use, for everything stems from the male situation in the house. And I'm not saying I've been a killer from it at the beginning. I mean, I've been very present in my kid's life, way better than these past 4.5 years since my bigger transformation was happening. But I could have done a better job. And I don't have many regrets in my life. I think that's where I would, but at the same time, God's working it all together for good. And I needed to maybe feel that pain to now be better now and guide them, but then also be able to teach other men the importance of it. So when we're talking about this stuff, guys, I don't want you to think that like, I just been slaying. I'm the perfect husband from day one. I'm the best dad ever from day one. No, like I dropped the ball in all of those areas. It's just I've also recognized it in so many things. I know for me personally, because I didn't have that. My dad was a sheriff's deputy, Vietnam vet, so masculine in certain worldly masculine ways, not masculine in spiritual leadership, integrity, character, honor, anything like that, zero. And so I didn't get guided in those things. And so, of course, I had to learn those on myself. But because I had that as a dad, I have developed, and I've gotten a lot better at it, the need to succeed rather than the desire to succeed. And I needed to succeed because my dad didn't affirm me, like you're saying, where we were telling our kids at the hike, great job, you're amazing, da, 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 da. My dad didn't say that to me, actually told me the opposite. And so I had this need to succeed in the world, which worked out slightly in my benefit because I grew this business and myself out of spite. After a while, that runs out and you realize this ain't the way. And then now I have the desire to succeed. I'm very curious because of what you just said about your dad. Do you have a desire to succeed or do you have a need to succeed?
That's a great question. And the honest answer is I don't know. I'd have to sit with that for a while. Um, I think at this point, if off the rip, what comes to mind, it's more of a desire now than it was when it was a need. Because what I've realized recently is I've actually asked a question of myself over the last couple months, is like, what is the desire or the need or the want to, where does my drive come from, other than the fact of what I started off the podcast with, talking about how I grew up in a rich neighborhood and, I don't want to be told no, right? That's a part of it. Um, I also, but I'm also consuming books about masculinity. That doesn't make me more money or make me more successful, right? So there's that aspect where I'm like, why am I so attracted to something like that, right? And the answer is that I've came to is I've been trying to become the man that I needed when I was young for
Mm.
years. that is what I've always like, why am I
Mm,
accumulating all these different types of knowledge? Yeah, there's the business books and the money books, and yeah, that's great. But then why is this? It's because I've been trying to put together what I lacked when I was young.
mm,
And just to touch on your dad for a second, what you were referring to, how I unpack that is there are a lot of men that have the exterior masculinity. What you're referring to is the interior
mm-hmm,
masculinity, right? Honesty, pride, loyalty, you name it. Those are interior characteristics. The world has us convinced that it's all about exterior, chasing women or nice cars, big fancy houses, pretty wife, whatever. It's all exterior stuff. But if you don't have the interior stuff to match it, or not match it, I actually think those things are irrelevant. If you want those things, great. You need the interior to truly be in your masculine. And that's where the world gets it wrong. That from what I see, I've gotten it wrong most of my life. So
dude,
yeah.
that's so good, man. You're such a smart dude, bro. Like, and I know I tell you this all the time and things like that, but it's just so true. It's just so cool to see somebody who like is authentic and real. This isn't theoretical. Like you've read a lot of books, but you also live like this way and so many different things, man. It's just so cool because that breakdown of exterior versus interior is so good. And that's where a lot of men get lost. And it's not their fault because nobody's told them this unless you've specifically sought it, whether that's coaching programs or read books, right? And like lent deep into it, right? Or podcasts or things. But even then, there's layers to this. Nobody going to teach you this. Nobody in school teaches you this. I don't care what school it is. And if your dad doesn't show you this in those things, and you don't have a model, you'll never know because the world, as the Bible says, Romans 12:2, do not conform to the patterns of this world where you'll go get the cars, the things like that. You'll get all the exterior stuff, which is what we typically, which is why when the good question is, how do you define success? Some people might say that's success. I probably would say that's a part of it, but a lot of it's this stuff that you're talking about, the interior. That's it. And it's hard to sometimes see. And sometimes it's because sometimes those people don't show, like they don't need to put it on social media and things like that. But the interior is where it's really at. And a lot of men come to me and they're like, and it's even just in marriage, they're like, I'm doing the chores, I'm doing this, this, and this. And I'm like, man, you're doing all the exterior stuff. What your wife wants is the interior of you, the vulnerability, the leadership, the love, the passion, all of that. She don't want that you can sweep the floor better than the next man. That ain't not getting her in the sack, bro. But they don't know different. They don't not know. Nobody's told them this stuff, that's what actually matters. And man, you're so right. If we could get the interior, if we get everybody fix the interior, this world would be a drastically different place. Not saying the exterior is not fun and we can't have it or God doesn't want us to have it, but not at the replace of the interior. Dude, I gotta read this real quick. Gosh, where did I put it? Oh man. I'm probably not going to be able to find it. Darn it. Oh no, I think it's right here. Sorry about this, dude. It's what God was telling me yesterday. This is what I'm reading books, guys. This is where it comes from. I'm reading books, and then all of a sudden my mind goes down a rabbit hole. It says, we lessen our ability to receive and give love when we conform to the patterns of this world. The greater the need for more sex, money, and things, the greater the need for love to counter that. Unfulfillment is from the first, more of the first and less of the last. That was a post I put out yesterday
Amazing.
that God was just telling me, like, but here's the funny thing, bro. This is how overhead that is for people that got like 12 likes. If I put out something about sex, I get 43,000 likes. And that's where the world is in a bad place. This right here, I just gave them a freaking template for like living the best life. And it's like, nah, screw that, dude. Tell my wife she needs to get on all fours. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, is why, but they've never been shown that. And it's because and literally somebody commented and goes, I can't believe you're putting out stuff like this. You have no idea what you're talking about. But this right here is like the gold, you know? So I'm not trying to toot my horn because that literally is from God. That's all I pray
You
for is
wrote that?
wisdom.
You came up with that?
Yeah. So
In my mind, I'm like, is this in the Bible? I kid you not. That's literally what went through my mind.
Thomas, yeah, it says in First Thomas chapter 3. Yeah.
First Thomas.
But dude, because all I pray for, I've told you this, is wisdom, knowledge, and love. Wisdom, knowledge, and love.
Yeah.
And God, for God to show me great and unsearchable things that I do not already know. And that's Jeremiah 33:3. And so when we do that, guess what? God will do that for us. But the more wisdom and knowledge we get, right, we got to use it for good and put it to action. And so, man, I know we just went off on a crazy tangent there, but that's what I just wish men knew, man. And so, like, what I love about this podcast, dude, is that, dude, we've both been in bad spots in a lot of different things, from family to doing dumb things to jail time to everything. But man, there's so much, no matter where you're at, it's never over with. If we just do these templates of like God, and we focus around ourselves with good people, we find our identity and we change our habits, good things happen. Like it's the foolproof plan. Um, I hate to shut this down. I literally have a call with somebody, which is funny, dude, because he's from New York and he's moving to Florida, which is so cool because, dude, like that's another what you just said. Hey, man, we need to move, and that's exactly what you did. You New Jersey to Florida on that. But just to wrap this up, man, I just got to honor you. Like, dude, you've become such a close friend of mine, and our journey together has been like, is a different one than I think I had with other friends from Man Academy. Whereas I think we didn't start connecting more until the very last one, where we were in like the small little breakout on the Saturday. And then we slowly started to connect more and more after it. And then now, like, dude, next thing you know, we're climbing Grand Canyon and just like doing cool things together. And it's really awesome to see, man. So I appreciate you. I thank you. I admire you. I respect you. And I just can't wait to see the more that God has for you. But I'm also just love seeing who you are at this person, because you are already enough in who you are. So I love you, brother. Thank you for being you. But with whatever final thoughts you may have, whether you want, if you want to say where they can find you, or if somebody's a business owner and they want to reach out to you about some connections for what you do, whatever it is, man, the floor is yours. Use this platform to be able to serve and whatever you need from it.
Yeah, no. Well, first off, I love you too, man. And you are a spiritual mentor. You are such a necessary voice in the world. And I don't think you even have any idea of how necessary you are, speaking
Thank
on the
you.
things that you speak about and helping, marriages from a biblical point of view. And I know so many people just from being going to the Grand Canyon last week and just seeing those guys around the campfire. Like, dude, everybody looks up to you in certain ways, man. And I love you and I honor you. And to plug any business owners that want to save money on health insurance, they can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Ryan Olito. But if they just want to, have a conversation, I'm open to that as well, man. So
Mm.
thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you, brother. And guys, what I want to point in on, Ryan was saying that to save money is what's cool about that. That typically would be a sales pitch for anybody, but no, Ryan's not he's doing this because it's a calling from God, where he was already killing it in insurance. He could just stay there and rack up the money, but he didn't feel great about what he was doing. And God said there's something else, and it's a crazy process. It'd be a whole long process. We'll have to do a part 2 of how he's been calling Ryan to that. And he's literally got a kingdom divine appointment for his business here, where it really is about serving other people, which is so cool. So I'm not saying, like, sometimes people say, well, I can save you money and things. And it's like, wink, wink, but I'm also going to kill it. This is really for you guys. Like, this is there, guys. And so that's why I told you the other day, bro, I got, obviously connected with some decent amount of business owners, and I'm always going to be plugging you for them, because one, for their benefit, but two, is that's what I love about alignments like this, bro, to get it. So guys,
Appreciate you.
like I said, reach out to Ryan. I'll put his contact info in the show notes. But as well, dude, if anybody out there is looking for coaching, anything, I have something that's literally affordable for everybody. And then my one-on-one, not going to joke, is a decent investment. But whatever, get some help. Get around other people. That's how I met Ryan. Was we both slapped down our credit cards and paid an insane amount of money to be in a room that we didn't know we'd be in. And now this is one of my closest people in my life, because we paid to be in a room with other people. And sometimes that you just got to put your money where your mouth is, because what you pay for, you pay attention to. So guys, and I'm not like just saying a sales pitch for me, but at the same time, like that's what I had to do to get out of the spot that I was in. And I know it was a big rocket booster to Ryan as well, when he did the exact same thing, and still does. We both still invest in things because of that exact same reason. So anyways, guys, we love y'all. Much love. God bless. And we'll see you next time.